Thank you for listening to the audio project with Deena Tearney. This podcast is recorded from my office in downtown Honolulu and welcomes you to join in the conversation. All right, on today's podcast, good friend of mine, Terrence Shaw from my old Dallas, Texas days. Thank you for being here, Terrence.
Yeah, no problem. It's great.
Yeah, awesome. For our audience, I'm going to dive right in. I want to provide a little bit of context in terms of you. We've known each other a really, really long time. I was just thinking a super long time, a scary long time in some senses. I met you first job out of college, and you were one of my early bosses. We had a lot of reorgs in those days, so you might have been boss number 3 or 4, even though it had only been a year or so in, because there were a lot of changes at that time.
Yeah.
But anyway, for our audience, if you don't mind introducing yourself and what you're doing now.
Sure. So Terrence Shaw, I run WireVod, which is a consultancy, and we do consulting in the enterprise space. And right now we do custom software development and architecture project management consulting, and 2 other services we're just adding on now, which is infrastructure as code and digital transformation. And so working on all of that from a consulting capacity.
Great, awesome. So before we jump in, because I want to learn more about infrastructure as code as well as digital transformation, because that's also, especially digital transformation, something we talk a lot about in the Salesforce world. But before we get into that, again, I think for a little bit of context for your background, because when you and I met, it was software development. Give me a little bit of a journey, because you've been one of those tech leaders. I've always viewed you as a tech leader. And by the way, I should mention, this is awesome that we're doing a virtual podcast. I forgot to mention this up front. Yeah. We're keeping our distance. We're keeping it real. So thank you for doing it this way. But yeah, I think you've been always someone that I think has had a depth of experience across a range of technologies. And I think for our audience, before we jump into infrastructure as code, I wanted to just see if you could give us a little bit of the lay of the land from your background and your evolution to get you to this point.
Yeah, so really where I started as a developer back in the 90s, right? And then worked up to where
90s.
90 something, you know. I said 90s, so it could be late 90s. But you know, got there. Did some really large projects when we worked at Sprint as application development manager, right? You know, Ion and those really large 90 team projects, you know, 90 person, you know, staff that I had across 3 cities doing all of that. And then, you know, start my own business.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you were one of the youngest managers. I have to say this. Were you not?
I was a young manager, yes. And that was part of the whole, I kind of came up in the .com era, right? And so we kind of came in, you know, old mainframe world. We kind of came in with client server, you know, newbies. But then it took off, and then we were able to leverage our experience, and a lot of us went up very quickly during that time frame because we had very relevant skills to where business was moving. And so, you know, after I did that, started my own, you know, worked at Sterling Commerce and did a lot of their products for a couple of years as the manager there, and then transitioned into my own business to where created my own business and did consulting, did some projects out even in Hawaii, you know, all across the nation. Basically, we did architecture consulting, custom software development, project management consulting, and still do that to this day. Probably about 6 years ago, I started to move into the infrastructure world and get into that, where I started to do infrastructure consulting. So I did architecture and design from a company's, you know, data center infrastructure all the way to cloud infrastructure as well. So it kind of rounded me out there to where I came up and grew up in the app dev world and kind of migrated and moved over to the infrastructure world. And so I kind of understand both. And I think that's been a benefit for us, not just being on one side of the fence, but understanding the application needs that actually have to run within the infrastructure and how to do that.
Awesome. Great. Well, then let's jump into it. Let's talk about infrastructure and code as code. Can you give me just a description of what it is? And then let's talk about why companies go this route.
Yeah, and it's really huge. A lot of companies are doing this right now and trying to go on this journey because they've seen the benefit is It's basically programmatically creating the creation of infrastructure, server, storage, network, and being able to programmatically do that. So if you want to stand up a development environment, we know this from our old days, right? Like, hey, we have no servers. It'll be 8 weeks before, we have to order new hardware before the hardware gets here. Then we got to stand it up and we need to do that. And we're like, our development project's due in 3 months, man. I can't wait, that long for my development environment. And so what it is, if you look at Amazon, you just go spin up servers, right?
Yeah.
Or Azure, any of the cloud services, they have that infrastructure on demand that you can just get that when you need it. Well, a lot of companies still have legacy data centers and a lot of data centers out there. And so what they're doing is they're having to create their infrastructure on demand to be able to have development teams and the other staff be able to spin up development environments when they need it. And that's basically what infrastructure as a code is, where the infrastructure team can go and create this automation to do their task in an automated fashion. It's really that simple, right? Now, there's a lot of complexity behind that, spinning up servers, adding storage, putting the network access in, which really gets complex. But that's really the target of it is doing the automation process with those infrastructure teams.
All right, cool. So is that, what kind of gets replaced? Like, how does it all work? Like, how do you come in and like set this up for people, or what's your role in all of this too?
Absolutely. So our goal is we come in and kind of, you have your team and they're doing their job, and we can kind of come in and help craft the code, create YAML files, get the architecture set up, create that to support the existing resources there, right? And because what we've seen is once you get it, and once the development teams and QA teams can set up their own development environments and set up their own QA environments, and even end users can set up their own application environments that they need. Well, this is kind of the one part of the whole DevOps lane. Once they do that, then what happens is there's two major components that need to be onto it. It's security and governance.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where really we partner with the companies we're coming in to work with, is their security teams need to understand, just because you can spin up development environment, that development environment can't have access to everything else. It needs to have access to only whatever that application or what runs in there needs to have. And so, and then, the other thing we find is, this is great. Once you can start spinning up servers, Amazon's great. When you spin up servers, but also you start getting charged. Well, if you have your own data center, it doesn't work that way. But you don't want these developers spinning up thousands of servers using resources and they're not using it. So really the governance, helping to understand and put in security models and governance and try to create that architecture to work with the existing teams to change how they do work today. Because really what is transforming how they do work today, those teams, instead of standing up infrastructure, now they have to do governance of the infrastructure, make sure that those environments are getting torn down, when they're not being used anymore and they're not just out there.
Wow, super interesting. What is the impact to the resources at the client that you're setting this up for? Do they, that were in the old days setting up these environments? What's the impact?
Yeah, it's really a transformation and learning for them, right? Because a lot of them are like, hey, it's storage guys, I allocate storage, right? It's the server guys, I do servers. The network team, they do network. Well, in the entire infrastructure lane, that's all changing. Infrastructure resources are coming down where you have the same resource that has to do storage, servers, and networking all together. And you have infrastructure resources across, not these siloed lanes anymore. And so that's been going on for the last 5 years in the infrastructure world, 10 years, where these resources are getting out of their silos and they're getting more into being able to serve. Well, instead of having a very depth of knowledge, they have to understand across the infrastructure. So what we're doing is, by creating code and doing the automation, they're able to stand those things up without having to know how all the underlying components work. And it's really a transformation of them to be able to manage the environment. So still need to know how much capacity you're gonna need next year, still need to monitor capacity going on, still need to make changes to the existing infrastructure. And so really it's a training of those resources to move out of just creating servers or creating storage for needs into being able to manage and govern and work with those application teams into understanding, now that they've got it stood up, making sure that they're tearing things down, making sure that the capacity is there. If there's storage issues with an app or performance issues with an app, that they can then dig into that. And it's really a transformation of their skills into more higher ordered learning and not just doing the basics that, creating servers for people when they need them.
Okay, cool. What's been the I'm just curious, like for the clients that you've done this with, how have they adapted to the change?
It's slow. It's a
Yeah.
slow adapting process, and I think part of it is like anything, right? Is I really push start small, get
Yep.
it working, do one thing,
Yeah.
focus on one application. The hardest things, some of the things we found is network access. It's well, we need to understand, what you may have a web app, you may have an application, and you may have a database. We're going to separate those out from a network perspective. What talks to what, and what application access does it need, external versus internal? And that's not really well documented
Yep.
anywhere, right? You
Yep.
really have to go back and mine all of that out. And then there's a lot of, hey, once you implement it, hey, this isn't working anymore, right? And so it's really, once you get the application through the process, then it's really easy to get it stood up. But there is an application discovery and learning, especially on older applications. The older applications that aren't very well documented, that have been running for a while, to get those transformed
Yeah.
into that.
So other than getting the environments then up and running, they go through this slow process, they get up and running, they're starting to see the benefits. Other than that flexibility of being able to spin up the environments as needed and kind of manage the scale, are there any other benefits? I would imagine financial direct save. I mean, are you seeing some of that? Yeah.
There's a lot of cost reduction.
Yeah.
I've been in there where we've got requests for new infrastructure at a client, and we look at the overall environment. We're like, your overall environment's only 33% utilized, right?
Yeah.
Well, why is that? Well, every developer knows this. I've always asked for more memory and storage than I need,
Yeah.
because if I don't ask up front and I've got to go back, it's going to take too long to get it. So give me as much as I can get, right? And so this over provisioning has happened in environments, and the infrastructure resources have to go back and reclaim those. Well, it's getting rid of all that, right? It's standing up and really understanding exactly how much does a dev environment for this application need versus a test environment versus a production environment, and be able to spin those up separately. And then that saves a tremendous amount of cost in hardware resources, and it really optimizes the performance once they understand that and spend the time and effort in doing it.
Okay, cool. So for customers that want to go this route, what are the important things that they've got to have in place to make this work?
Yeah, I think, it's understanding. I think the first is the network. That's the hardest piece, but also getting a model of security and governance ready. Because what happens is, once you enable an application and you give the access directly to the developers to their own environment, you better have governance in place. Because if you don't, what I've seen is generally governance follows. It follows out of, my God, we've used up all the capacity in the area that we've set up for this, right? And a lot of it, we set up a separate specific infrastructure area just for infrastructure as code. Well, then it gets consumed because the developer's like, oh, this is so easy. And they can just run a script and turn up an entire application environment. And, oh, we run another script and turn it up, or test something. And there's all the testing in the application. You got to really maintain that governance. You got to get on there to get those, and have the infrastructure team really understand what's needed and when,
Awesome.
and then just cut off that stuff.
I love it. Cool. This is good. Good. I mean, my experience always in this infrastructure space has been, especially now with Salesforce, it's all they do it all, right?
All right.
So yeah, I don't have to think about it. So it's interesting to know that for those people that have this in place and still are
Yeah.
doing a lot, they need to have a model to better manage and govern how they optimize their resources, technical assets as well as actual people resources. So very cool. Awesome.
No,
So let's,
Salesforce has been doing this for a while,
yeah,
right? They've been doing it for a long time, and they govern it by this: that you can turn up as much as you want as long as you pay for it, right? And then people self-govern when you have to pay for it. They're like, hey, it's just in the data center world, internals of the companies, they don't see those direct costs come back to them like on a credit card bill the next month.
right, right, exactly. Cool. Well, let's switch gears, talk about digital transformation. What are you doing in the digital transformation space? What does work look like for you there?
So really getting into the space now, and trying to work with customers in this space has been going on for 5 or 6 years already, where companies are trying to digitally transform. Everybody wants digital transformation. Let's do it now. Let's get to digital transformation. And right now we're working with a company that does auto repair. and they're actually doing that, working to actually be able to get. They have a lot of people that are out in the field, and they repair autos, and these technicians work for them part-time and charge time back to them. Well, they have like one system that they have to key all these repairs into. So these guys little email and fax and do all this stuff to get it back. And so really what that is creating a mobile application that allows them to go ahead and type in what they've done. Very simple. Send it in and send it into the database, and then they can invoice and process off a collective thing, rather than having the existing manual web app that they've had for years, having to take all that in and have to have people back and key it. But digital transformation has kind of gone on. If you look at the overall market, like Starbucks, for instance, is a great example of how it not only just, it's not just about the technology component, it's about changing the business processes. So the transformation piece of this really comes into the companies have to change how they work, how they do business, and how they interact with their customers as part of this. And you can really see this if you look at the Starbucks app. You know, years ago, I just go to the coffee shop. There's one here in Las Colinas, and it's always packed. At 7 o'clock, there's usually a line out the door. Well, the issue is they put in the mobile app so you could order ahead. So of course, at this Starbucks, everyone ordered ahead. Which is great for me, because what that means is finding a place to sit down and have a meeting with somebody after 7 o'clock. It was hard to get one, right? A place, but once they could order ahead, now there's a bunch of people that would just come in, pick up coffee, and leave. And it would already be there. And the amount of time they spent inside was a lot less. They're not sitting around in chairs waiting just to get coffee most of the time. But you could see the transformation in this one store where they had to now create a separate area for to-go orders, because they even have it alphabetized in the Starbucks, right, by last name, or by name, right? Because there's literally like 100 to-go orders in the morning in this one store, and so they've had to, over the years, create different processes internally to this store to manage it through the app. But what did it start at? It started as creating the app that allows you to order ahead, pick your store, charge it, get the money, doing all of that. And then that behavior is literally driving different consumer behavior. But some of the, and so really that's kind of digital transformation of how do you interlay this technology to be able to better serve your customer and who your customer is.
Yeah, absolutely. We do a lot. I mean, Salesforce as a product for us and helping our customers through their journey on the product is always initiated because a client is interested in a digital transformation. They're wanting to make a change to their process. They want to be more customer focused. What are some of the other purposes that you're finding that someone comes and says, hey, I want to do this digital transformation? What's usually that underlying business thing that they're after for you? Like, what's some of the examples?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is trying to pull out, like, okay, so part of that is how do we tie that to the strategy or business? So what I like to do is tie back to what are the goals of the business and objectives for this year? Because unless you tie the digital transformation directly to the overlying ROI, again, if we don't get away from ROI and underline what we're trying to accomplish. Sell more, right, is generally that, but specifically, what are you trying to sell? How are you trying to engage your customers, and how can we better do this? And part of it is, if you look at some of the failures that have happened, right, where you had GE literally created, we're going to have, IoT. We're going to put all these devices everywhere, and it's going to be great, it makes a lot of sense. Well, what did they do? They created a separate company, and then they did a bunch of IoT devices, right? And so it's not integrated with their core business. It's not integrated with that. And now they're trying to sell these IoT devices. It would be like me trying to create all these IoT devices, go to GE and say, use them. It's the same thing, right? It's not integrated with their core business. Like, what's the purpose of this IoT device? How are we going to make money or serve our customer better? How are we going to integrate this? What is that? And then go and do that. And then the biggest thing I found is, especially in the larger customers, is where we serve, is they try to do too much too fast, which is a lot of like, well, let's just digitally transform the whole thing. I get it, I'm bought in, and they get sold, and then let's just do it all. No, you need to do something specific to accomplish your goals, try to focus and target ROI or more customer engagement, and then, do it in small implement fast, and right. And if it's going to fail, we're going to fail fast. We're going to change it. We're going to pivot, and we're going to do it again. And you got to get that MVP entrepreneur model
Yeah.
in implementing those things. And we can't make it a 400 person project to
No.
implement this, which we tried with Ion, right? We've been there and done that.
Yeah. Oh,
right.
those were fun times.
Let's just get this $250 million project we're going to do and implement it in 9 months, right? And so how that goes,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of the strategy. It's about strategy of implementing, but it's also about trying to really understand the business objectives and ROI factors of how can we leverage digital transformation to leverage exactly what marketing and business product owners are trying to drive out this.
Yeah, agree. We just did I just did a fireside chat with one of our clients on their digital transformation journey. Again, for us, the platform is Salesforce, but they definitely tied. I love what they did because a few years ago they really tied it back to what some of their objectives were. This is a healthcare company that provides services to
Okay,
elderly people in Hawaii, which they're going through a lot right now. I can only imagine. But nevertheless, they had this drawing where they showed their vision of having their customer, their clients at the center of all the different program offerings that they provide to their population.
Yep.
And going through it, I think you're 100% right. It's got to be tied to something specific, and it's about the customer in this case, and then taking it as a journey. It's got to be stepped and faced, because otherwise it's like that's a big undertaking. Great vision, but like a lot to take on. So, and they've approached it the right way. So
Yep. But you can add it by piece by piece by piece. Don't try to boil the entire ocean all at one time. Just do a small thing that works, and then see what works, and then keep adding to it and keep doing it.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Great. So, any other digital transformation issues that you've run across that you can think of at the moment?
No, I think it's just it's really getting alignment on it's all about the business objective, right? There's a lot of failures, and I think right now people are getting kind of gun transformation because of that. But if you look at, there's a lot of successes, like some of the ones I use, like Buffalo Wild Wings, right? My son loves to eat at Buffalo Wild Wings. So we have the Buffalo Wild Wing app. What do? You check in, right? And so I can check into where we go, and it gives me points, and I can use those points, and eating gives me points when I eat there, and then I can get appetizers and things for free when I go. Yeah. So, but what does it provide them? It gives them information to be able to specifically market to me and target me and send me targeted markets. So instead of just blasting email out to everybody going, come eat at Buffalo Wild Wings, they're going to send me an email and can even offer me coupons to my local Buffalo Wild Wings because they have the data around me. Yeah. So once you get that engagement with your customers and they start to use it, you have an app for a specific purpose that gives me a benefit, but then they also gain the benefit of being able to specifically target market, right? How many times have I gone to this? What am I going? Why do I go? What time do I go? And then be able to specifically market to that. And if you read anything about Seth Godin or what Seth talks about, Seth talks about market just to your customers. I don't care if that's you're the audience. It's your minimal viable audience, and he talks about minimal viable audience. And these things are high engaged people to your business. Stop trying to market to the entire world. Market to the people that matter. And this is what the benefits kind of provide. Once you get engagement, market to those people, and then build on that.
Yeah, and I love that too, because it's also like add value first, right? Like make it easy for them to, you're adding value, so they're going to do it, and then the effects can continue to roll. So add value first too. Cool. So I guess we can change gears, talk about whatever else is on your mind these days.
Remote
so
working
much on your mind.
Yeah, that's all I have. I can't go anywhere. I can't go to. I can't sit in Starbucks. I can't eat out. So I have to remote work. So I'm getting
a lot done.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot. Well, I am getting a lot done, and but it's funny. It's the change, and we're IT professionals, so we're used to remote working, right? Remote working is not anything new to me. I think it's just the way I engage with a lot of people, over coffee or over lunch or grabbing a beer. And all of those things are now gone for the
Yeah.
temporary. And so now I'm spending a lot more time on the phone. I'm spending a lot more time engaging people in different ways, to try to stay, do that. I think it's it's been like a week of hardcore stay at home for everybody. So everybody's itching to get out. I went running yesterday outside, and it was like 70 degrees here, and there's about 5,000 people outside distance from each other, but still, like, we got to get outside, and just, get a walk in or get some sort of exercise in, as the gyms are closed and everything else is closed. So I think it's the adjustment to that period, is really trying to figure out how to do that, and how to work through all of that,
Yeah.
and see what the impacts are going to be.
Yeah, we'll see. I think a few more weeks, the patience is going to be needed over the next period, and hopefully we can all deal with each other in the meantime. But it's been good. I mean, I think you're right. I think in our industry, I popped into the office just to kind of peek. There was still some people milling around
Right.
downtown, but it's definitely sparse. Um,
Yeah.
and then the offices, we're accustomed to working from home. A lot of our customers are still businesses. I mean, everything's plowing forward. We're able to
Yeah.
continue with all of our projects, so that's good in that sense. Any questions for me? Any
Yeah.
thoughts for
Yeah.
me?
So especially because you are doing, or tell me, you are doing Salesforce. Your services are Salesforce, but what are you selling around Salesforce, and how does that work? Because I'm not. I know Salesforce is a CRM tool, right? That I use, and I still use. I'm a Salesforce customer. I use that. But aside from that, I went out there and looked. I'm like, oh my God, there's like a million other things out there. What do you offer with services, and how do you do that? As you guys are selling Salesforce, or as a partner?
Yeah, so our services are kind of all over the place in the sense that, we offer a pretty wide range. So for a customer that's interested in this digital transformation, we'll kind of work through them on what that actually is going to look like, and help them scope it out and figure out what their journey might be.
Okay.
But thankfully, kind of depending on what they need, our skill sets range from the project management, business analysis, the configuration, development. There's lightning component development. There's a lot of development now well, there was, and now they've kind of transitioned that. Integration, data migration, the whole bit. They have a product called MuleSoft as well. So we're doing MuleSoft work for, enterprise integration. So it's
Okay.
really the full gamut of the skill set. And then when
Yeah.
you look at Salesforce, they've kind of dimensioned their products they have kind of their core products, Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, which most people are familiar with. And
Okay.
then App Cloud is kind of a generic version of those two,
Okay.
meaning if you want to just build an application, then you could build that application on on the platform, if you will.
Okay.
Gets you up and
Nice.
running quickly, gets you moving into development. You skip the infrastructure steps, right? You can just move
Ah,
straight
it's already there. They've
into
already done it.
um, and then in addition, we have a lot of expertise on a product called Community Cloud. Community
Okay.
Cloud would be like for online engagement. So if you have a portal, or maybe a partner portal that you want to create an online experience. So this whole omni-channel concept, right? But this would be
Yeah.
online experiences, and there's a bunch built in, like you can do bots and chat and everything else. But if you want
Right.
to have a
Right.
customer portal, or you want to have a partner portal, for your partner channel, all of that sits on would basically, there's no integration needed because it's on the same platform, same database as Salesforce. So doing a lot in that space as well. And then then Salesforce starts to dimension things by industry. So we have a lot of experience actually with Health Cloud. So we
Okay.
specialize in health, both on the health insurance, as well as called the payer side, as well as the provider. And then
Okay.
we do a lot on financial services. So yeah,
Huh.
and we do a lot of government, but government doesn't have their own specific cloud yet
Right.
necessarily. But
Okay.
they use usually Service Cloud and a variety of tools. So you're right, the range has gotten so big. And I was having this conversation with somebody because I came from the Siebel CRM space. Actually,
Yeah.
when you and I worked together, I think I was already on that at that point because I was very early in my career. And I remember working for a client in Los Angeles, and their APAC team, their Japan team, was using Salesforce, and we were moving all of their CRM. Some were homegrown. Those are global sales teams. This is all over the
Yeah.
place. and their Japan team flew into LA, showed us, okay, this is what we use. We use Salesforce, and it was literally like contacts and accounts. Like that was it. Like
Yeah,
this is
right,
what we
right.
use. You know, it's
Yeah,
like, oh, and we're just kind of like laughing in the background. You know, like, oh my gosh. And now you look at the product, and it's truly been impressive. I think what Salesforce has been able to do with their product, and the innovations that they've brought to the table, to bring
yeah,
people solutions. I mean, even the thing that you were mentioning earlier about field, field service.
that's right.
The client that we have that is in the healthcare space, and we've done this for other clients as well, is there's a mobile application. It's called Field Service Lightning, and it does GPS tracking. You can do dispatching. It's the entire model. They can see what their orders are for that day, everything they've got to go do. When they arrive at client, they check in, they do all their bits, they check off all their boxes. They can have the client sign, send PDF. So that whole just the innovations that I think that Salesforce has put on their platform has been really, truly transformational over the last, I mean, just even in the last few years. I feel like every time I turn around, there's something new, and I'm like, whoa, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
So from going from accounts and contact Rolodex to
All right.
what they are now, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. It's really moving to the platform.
Yeah, exactly.
So, so how are you engaging? So since you're in Hawaii, right?
Hmm.
You have customers outside of Hawaii.
Yes.
How are you engaging with customers? How are you keeping? It's probably this whole remote, model is not new for you, right?
No.
Having to support customers, that are in different time zones than you, and I think you do both West and East customers, right? So how
Yeah.
are you engaging? How are you staying on top of all that?
Well, we have a distributed team, and so that helps. We have people on the U.S. mainland as well as in APAC, and so
Okay.
Hawaii is sort of the hub. It's the central zone
Yeah,
between it's the crossroads in the Pacific.
that's right.
So, so that helps. To have the distributed team. It's challenging in one respect, but again, we've grown accustomed to it because that's been our world for quite some time.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I think in terms of engaging our customer, I mean, they know, we know, and then we can plan. Like if they want us to come in earlier, start early, stay late, or do some adjusting as needed, then it's fine. It's usually pretty well planned because we approach our projects with a methodology. So things start off with
Okay.
workshops and requirements. And so people know, like, okay, I'm going to be involved with you during this time. They know, like, when things kind of get quiet and then when they need to come back. So it's relatively well scheduled when
Okay.
we have the engagements. And then if there's ad hoc questions, which there's invariably always going to be ad hoc meetings and things like that, I think, I think our customers are, if they're going on a digital transformation, they're usually able to engage with us, which is nice.
Okay.
So that helps.
Good. Good.
Our client isn't completely cut off from their internet, which helps.
That's right. So
Yeah.
tell me about this too, because you're in Hawaii. Tell me about your mainland clients. Do you have any issues with them being like, all you guys do is sit on the beach? You guys
They think
work
we
in the office. How do you get past that whole thing? Like, oh, it must be awesome to be in Hawaii because
well, you know this because you've been here.
yeah,
We work like normal. So
that's
maybe
right.
you didn't, but
I did, yeah, I know. I'm telling you this because this is the issue I had, right? Like, I would stop telling people I'm in Hawaii because they would always imagine me on the beach,
yep.
and I'm actually going to downtown Honolulu, and I'm sitting in a room that has no windows underground, right? It's not. I could be anywhere.
Yeah,
It's no different.
it's the same. Yeah, I mean, and it's true. I mean, I don't think that anybody really is bothered by it. I think the only thing people wish is that all the meetings were held here. They're like, oh, wait, like if we could figure out a way to make the meetings there, that would be so much better. But
Yeah.
I think the work speaks for itself, so they know we're not sitting around on the beach.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, they're always like, gosh, I'm so jealous. I wish meetings were held there instead.
You're like, yeah, you wouldn't be if you knew traffic in downtown
Yeah,
Honolulu,
true.
right?
Very
Yeah.
true. Very true. Cool. Well, thank you for your time. I'm glad we were able to do this. I need to get out to Dallas sometime soon and hang out with the Wire Vibe crew.
Right.
Those are good. We had a lot of good times. So I appreciate you taking time to chat on what's new with you. And cool. Thank you.
All
Oh,
right, Dina.
actually, I have a
Yeah.
question for you. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
build up. I'm trying to build up a one of the things that we do as a company is we've taken a pledge 1%, which essentially means that we're pledging 1% of our time to give back. And our give back of choice is inspiring youth to pursue careers in technology. So I'm
Oh,
asking
okay.
for those that are in technology, such as you, an impressive technology leader. I mean, your whole career has been quite impressive. What advice would you give to a student who's interested in pursuing a career in technology?
Well, easy. It's really easy. Get hands on. Do it. Right. And I mean, like if you look at Combat Code or sites like that, there's so many websites out there now that you can learn for virtually free online. And even if you don't have computer or anything at home, you can go to the library and use their computers for free. Like so really my whole advice is go online, learn and do. And that's the best way. You don't need to go to, I mean, there's so many online resources. I mean, gosh, pull up YouTube. Just
Yeah.
don't look at cat videos. Just Google code, right? And there'll be a million free things out there for you to
Yeah.
do. But some of these other things like Code Combat and these other sites are specifically will guide you step by step through it without even having an instructor. And the thing about the youth of today, they're already growing up digital savvy, so they already know how to log in, get on mobile, do all the stuff, it's not like when we were back in the day, rocking and things, they don't even know what that is anymore, and it's scary. College kids don't even know what it is now, like, but that's what I would tell them. Just get online and go get hands-on experience. There's no better teacher than that. And then that'll help you build those skills.
I love that. That's great advice. Thank you, Terrence.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Okay, I'm going
Have a
to
great day.